guys, we are Matt and Abby, and today's YouTube video is going to look a lot different than anything you've seen on our YouTube channel in the past. Typically, we share tips and tricks for growing photographers and creative small business owners, but we wanted to get really personal today. So we're sharing our personal story with you, just the road that we've been walking over the last 3+ years, and some exciting news that you can probably already guess based on the title of this YouTube channel. But we really wanted to share with you guys like how we came to the decision that we've come to and where we're going from here.
So just to give you a little background on us, we were both here from the Washington, D.C. area. We met in college, started dating, got engaged 6 months later.
Yeah, everyone thought we were nuts.
And a year after that, we actually got married.
So we were 22 and 23 when we got married, and everyone thought we were so young, but it's been almost 8 years at this point and never been stronger.
Yeah. And so with that, our desire to be parents has grown a lot, especially over the last 3+ years, where we've struggled with being able to get pregnant. We struggled with infertility, and so it's been really hard on us to every month be told no.
So we started, it was in May of 2015 was when we started trying to grow a family. And something that they don't talk a lot about in high school in all of your like family life education classes is that it may actually be difficult to get pregnant. It's just like Coach Carr in Mean Girls says, like, don't have sex because you will get pregnant and die. Like, so you just assume that getting pregnant is the opposite of that. And so when we first realized that this was going to be hard, that was, I mean, as most couples who experience infertility will tell you, was devastating because nobody in our immediate circles had dealt with that. We didn't know that that was coming. We didn't know that that was like really a possibility, which sounds so naive, but you know, you walk into marriage like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you're so excited and you think that like this is the plan that you have for your life, and so naturally that's how things will go. And that's not what happened for us. And so we started trying in May of 2015. And by July of 2016, just started getting really frustrated of feeling like everyone around us was adding 2 and 2 and getting 4. And we were doing the exact same equation, adding 2 and 2, and we were only getting 3 and couldn't figure out why. So at that point, started looking into like the medical side of things. Like, hey, is something going wrong? Like, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with you? Like, are we doing something wrong? Like, we just didn't know. And so you went to your doctor, right? You went to
I went to my doctor, did all the tests.
Everything was normal.
Everything was completely normal.
And I went to my doctor and got checked out. Everything was normal there. So we were kind of back at square one. Like, nothing's wrong with either one of us. Why isn't this working? And so the first step was my OB put me on 2 rounds of Clomid, which is a medication that's supposed to trigger ovulation. So we did 2 rounds of Clomid, which anyone who's ever been on Clomid will tell you makes you, like most people who will tell you who've been on Clomid, makes you crazy hormonal and like night sweats. And it was a nightmare. So we did 2 rounds of that, and again, just devastated when that didn't work because I thought that was going to be like the magic fix. Again, because there was nothing medically pointing to why we couldn't get pregnant. It should have just been a simple fix. So that was in, I think, like October, November, December of 2016. So then 2017, didn't want to pursue any more of the like Clomid round just because it made me feel so crazy. So we started seeing a fertility specialist that we absolutely loved. She was an endocrinologist and a fertility specialist here in our area. And she ran all the same tests. And then some more, like a lot, like further tests, just again, diving into like cycles and blood work and linings and all of that fun stuff, and came to the same conclusion, nothing wrong with either one of us. And so she said that made us really good candidates for IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, which, to put it in crude terms, is basically medically assisted sex. It's not super invasive. You can Google more if you want to know more, but it's relatively easy, I would say.
Yeah.
And so we did 3 of those. We did those, I think it was March, April, and May of 2017.
And that was natural IUI. We did it without any medicine or anything like that. It was basically just the insemination.
Yeah. And so we're like really hopeful that was going to work. And it didn't, which was very difficult. Again, especially because there was nothing pointing to why it couldn't work. It was like 2 + 2 should equal 4. And yet we can only seem to get 3, no matter how many different calculators we try or how many different ways of like counting on our fingers and toes, like nothing seemed to add up to 4. So our doctor told us last summer to take the summer off, keep trying naturally, and that we come back in the fall. And so that's what we did.
And we tried one more round, this time with medicine introduced to it, so that way we
left everything. We told our doctor, because it was expensive, and like we'll add this, like our insurance, we live in the state of Virginia, insurance doesn't cover any of our fertility treatments.
It just covers diagnostics.
Yeah, so all the tests to let us know that there was nothing wrong with us were covered, but none of the IUIs, none of the medication, any of that was covered. So all of this was coming out of pocket. So we did one more round, and we told our doctor, before we move on to anything else, let's just try one more IUI. Let's leave it all in the field. Throw everything at me that you feel comfortable throwing at me. And so we did follistim injections, which is a shot that you inject yourself with at home, which triggers your ovaries to release eggs. And the hope is
to make more eggs.
Stimulates your ovaries to make more eggs in the hopes that one of those will result in a fertilized embryo, which will then grow into to a child that you'll be able to carry. We had between 4 and 6, what they call them follicles before they release from the ovary. So I had 4 to 6 follicles, which would then become eggs upon release. And our doctor had us do a trigger shot 36 hours before the IUI. And this was all in September of last year. Did the trigger shot, had the IUI. 36 hours later, ended up in the emergency room with excruciating abdominal pain. Like 10 p.m. at night, it was the worst pain I've ever been in. And figured out it was a pelvic infection. We don't know what it was caused by, if it was a trigger shot, if it was the
follistim,
or if it was just like a fluke, like a total fluke. It was so strange. And that was followed by not conceiving, and some of the worst abdominal pain I've ever been in. I'm laughing about it now. I did not laugh about it then. And after that, when we realized that round had failed, just being completely devastated, and realizing throughout this whole process, people tell you keep the faith, don't lose hope, make sure you guys are still staying hopeful, and really grappling with what does hope look like in that situation, and how do you keep hope when the answer has continued to be no, and a hard no every single month, for at that point I think 27 months. So we're Christians, and just through praying and really seeking God on what was next, we felt like IVF was going to be the next thing for us. And that was what our doctor had recommended, that there was really no point in continuing to pursue IUI, law of diminishing returns. If it hasn't worked by now, it's probably not going to work for us. So we met with a fertility clinic in our area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we liked the idea of it. We liked the clinic. There's nothing wrong with it or anything.
We liked the doctor that we met with a lot.
Yeah, and it came down to a point where we just weren't financially there because, again, our insurance wouldn't cover anything, any rounds, any medication. It would not cover anything for us.
And the total cost of investment that we were looking at was going to be between $30,000 and $50,000.
All up front.
No, not all up front. But the initial upfront investment was going to be about $25,000 to $28,000, just to get started with the first round with the particular plan that we were looking at using. And we didn't feel comfortable taking out any kind of financing or loan for any of that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that personally, financially, we just didn't want to start our journey as parents already in debt, because having a kid, I've heard, is really expensive already. So we made the decision that before we started with IVF, we wanted to have those funds ready to go up front, so that there was never any kind of financial strain on us.
Yeah, and having that on top of what we normally have for our business, normally have for our personal, just making sure that we have everything, and so we're not going to go in a crazy spiral if we spend all this money.
Essentially, we were taking our tax returns from 2016 and saying, okay, we need to make at least that much plus 30 to 50,000 extra dollars. And so in January, we started planning, like, what can we launch? How can we, like, what are some ways we can generate some additional revenue? And the answer just continued to be like, wait, which was so frustrating because I'm a doer and I don't like sitting on my hands feeling like I can't do anything. And at the same time, as we're waiting through months of just like the Lord telling us to wait, people in our life, like people started either coming into our lives or coming back into our lives that like adoption was part of their story.
So whether it was at a wedding or whether it was our business coaches or maybe a book we were reading, just adoption kept coming back over and over again into our lives and into our story. Which
was weird because we, that had never been part of our story before. Like, we didn't have a ton of friends who were in the midst of adoption. And I mean, like, we knew of people that had, but it was never anything that was like in our faces. And then all of a sudden it was like beginning in April of this year, it just like all of a sudden was like very, very present. And like Matt and I, when we got married, had I'm sure the discussion that a lot of newlyweds have, like, hey, if we, for some reason find ourselves not able to have our own children, would you be open to adopting? And like, yeah, of course. And then it never came up again because we just, again, assumed that getting pregnant would be easy like that. And it's just weird, like how the Lord like brought that back up, that I think I had assumed in those conversations, in those naive conversations when we were first married, that having our own children was like the ideal way to start our family, and that if we couldn't have our own children, then we would move on to plan B, never even considering like the weight and the beauty and just how incredible adoption is as a way to start your family, that it may have been like our second choice, but that it's not second best, that adoption is just as amazing of a way to start a family. It's just different.
It's beautiful because you're giving a home to a child that otherwise wouldn't have one.
And that, like, I mean, even selfishly, that it's fulfilling our desire to be parents. And so that's been one of my favorite parts of the last several months, is just seeing how my outlook on adoption has changed, that like realizing this is just as beautiful of a way to become parents. It's different. It's not as traditional, but it's just as good. And it is such a beautiful picture of the gospel of how we were adopted into the Father's family. It's a very literal picture of that. And we are so excited to play a very, very small, very humble part in that. So all of that brings us to, you know, when all these people in our lives started coming up, or not coming up, but like coming back into our lives, or like just really in our face about adoption was part of their story. Not that they were in our face, but just that was being placed very much in front of us. Started considering it more, with a lot more intentionality than we had before. And so then the question and the prayer became, should we pursue IVF or should we pursue adoption? When before I had just been like one track mind, like we're definitely doing IVF. And like, I don't know, I just feel like the Lord gave us both a lot of peace about pursuing, just maybe researching, talking to folks who had come into our lives and asking questions and realizing like, yeah, this is a huge and weighty thing, but it's doable. And I think that was the biggest thing that opened the door for me, was like realizing that it was possible. So we started researching more agencies, and as of 2 weeks ago, have decided on one that we're using here in the area. And as of a week ago, sent in our application, and as of 3 days ago, got approved. So
we'll be starting this week with our initial meeting, like
intake
meeting after they've been accepted. And so this is the first step on this long journey. It's going to take a while, so we're excited, we're nervous. It's going to be hard, but we wanted to make these videos just so we can take you along with us, and so bring clarity to a kind of a unclear process for you guys. So you'll be experiencing what we experience as we experience it.
I mean, secondhand.
Yeah, secondhand. You won't be following us. We won't have a camera with us as you. But
I feel like, I mean, when I was a kid, we had, especially growing up in the church, we had a lot of like families that I knew of that had adopted. But for me, I felt like the concept of adoption was this just like big, vague idea that was blurry and unknowable and expensive. And like, if you had this like big black hole that you threw a lot of money and a lot of time into, eventually, hopefully, you would get a child out of it. And I think that unknowability for me was probably what kept me from considering it for so long, kept us from considering it for so long, because it just seemed so overwhelming. And starting the process, we can tell you it is overwhelming. Even just the limited amount of paperwork that we've had to fill out already, and the like short 45-minute meeting that we've already had. I know that that's just the very tip of the iceberg, that there's so much more where that came from. But we also know that that unknowability might keep other families from even considering this as a way to grow or expand their family. And so that's why we wanted to share. And so we'll be coming back with periodic updates about our process and roadblocks that we're hitting, and like, I guess mile markers checkpoints that we hit, because we want to like maybe open the box a little bit on this process of what is adoption? Like, what does that look like? How complicated is that? How messy is it? And like, at the end of the day, how beautiful is it that two people who so desperately want to become parents can give a home to a child who may not otherwise have one? So we're really excited. And so in that, we also wanted to answer a few frequently asked questions from our friends and family that we've gotten already as we've been sharing news for them. So question number 1, domestic or international?
So we've actually decided to go domestic with domestic newborn, to be specific.
Yes. So typically there are 2 main tracks that you can go with adoption. You can either choose to adopt here from the U.S., or you can adopt internationally, which usually means that you adopt a slightly older child. And we investigated both options and just ended up having doors open for us that made us feel really comfortable pursuing domestic infant adoption. And so we are going to be adopting a baby here in the U.S. We don't know where from. Probably somewhere like near the Eastern Seaboard in some way, shape, or form, but we're not sure. But we're excited to like have a little bit of clarity on that.
Question number 2, why not pursue IVF?
So that was one of the questions that we got a lot, because I had, in sharing publicly, like blogging and sharing on social media about our infertility journey so far, had shared that IVF was our next step. And so this was a little confusing for friends of ours who were like, hey, how's IVF going? And we're like, actually, we're not doing that. And I will be totally honest with you, it was nothing ethical, it was nothing moral, there was nothing in us that was like, ooh, IVF is bad. It was just a feeling of peace about adoption is what's for us right now. It was just clarity that we sought and found through prayer, and really felt like the Lord was pushing us to adoption, not IVF, at least for this season in our life. Private adoption or agency adoption?
So we've decided on an agency, as we mentioned before. We're really excited to work with them. They know what they're doing. They've done this a lot. They know all the laws. They know how to do this so much better than we ever could. Ethically,
safely, in the way they call it the triad, and which is the triad of the birth mom and the waiting family and the adoptive child. And so the agency that we're working with places a huge emphasis on safe and ethical adoptions for everybody in that triad. Especially because we're so new to this, we didn't feel comfortable moving forward with a private adoption just because there is so much out there. There are unsafe practices out there. There's just a lot of risk out there when you open yourself up to adopting. And so we really wanted to make sure we were in the best hands possible. So we are going with an agency.
Yeah, and we love that this agency actually also does a lot of post-placement work with it. So they not only do the required post-placement that happens.
Like post-placement visits. So after you've been placed with a child and the child's in your home, like they have state required, or I guess federal required visits that they have to do to make sure everyone's doing okay. But then the agency that we're working with is like, hey, we're here for you, like
for a lifetime.
For a lifetime, as long as you need. If your kid's in their teens and you're like, he won't clean his room, and is this like an adoption thing, or is this just like a 14-year-old teenage boy thing? That they're there and they're excited to help with those kind of questions and that kind of counseling. So we're really excited for that.
Question 4: boy or girl?
Yes. In all honesty, it doesn't matter to us. We're just really excited to be parents, and we'd be thrilled with either a boy or a girl. Number 5, what's next?
So as we mentioned earlier, that our intake meeting this week is what's next, and so that's where we do our initial paperwork with the company.
I think, right?
I think we do. I think we do our initial paperwork.
She said to expect a 2 to 3 hour meeting, so I'm guessing there's probably paperwork somewhere in there.
And then after that, we will get everything we need ready for our home study, which is a a 3 to 4 month process where they come in and interview us, see our home, and just make sure that we're fit to be parents.
So the home study, from what I understand, is dual purpose in the sense of like coming in, getting to know us, asking about our psychological, mental background, our thoughts on parenting. So getting to know us to make sure that we're going to be a good fit as parents, but then also getting to know us to help decide like what sort of child we would be a good home for. So we're really excited about that. Very intimidated because it's a super in-depth process. Where I think they not only talk with us, they also talk with a couple of references that we've given them. So they really get to know you like through and through, inside and out, which is really intimidating. But it's good because it means that at the end of the day that they're going to they're going to match us with the best possible baby that we can hopefully be amazing parents for.
Thank you guys so much for listening to our story. We're so excited to get started, and we're so excited to have you guys along for the ride.
So what you can expect from us in terms of updates is we're going to be sharing updates as we go. Probably a couple checkpoints throughout the home study, once we become a waiting family, any kind of big milestones that we reach, we want to share those with you guys because we know that those are going to be super helpful. And just in terms of like clearing those murky waters when it comes to the whole wide world of adoption. So we're excited to have you guys with us, like Matt said. And in the meantime, you guys should definitely follow along with us on Instagram using the hashtag Springman Journey to Baby, which you guys can find down in the show notes. We'll see y'all soon.